Hello, my name is Joseph Alfonso Watts. I am a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I enlisted in the Marines on May 9, 2001. I originally enlisted because my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, was pregnant. Well, she actually became pregnant the year prior to me going in. Needed stability, needed a good job, and needed benefits. And, it's also one of those things I wanted to do from the time I was a child. I served in Operations Enduring Freedom, Joint Task Force 510 in the Philippines. Also served in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Securing Tomorrow in Haiti, 2004. Each mission was a little different. Enduring Freedom in the Philippines was part of the worldwide search and hunt for Al-Qaeda members, as well as other terrorist cells and regimes around the world. Operation Iraqi Freedom was self-explanatory. Operation Securing Tomorrow was the United States' answer to attempted coup on then President Jean Aristide of Haiti. And we went down there on an emergency evacuation and supposedly quote-unquote peacekeeping mission. I served in the United States Marine Corps as a Lance Corporal. That's an E-3. And after continued my service for 4 more years in the Tennessee Army National Guard as an E2. And that's private, or PV2, which is the equivalent of a PFC in the Marine Corps. What is war like? Well, on a daily basis, war is hell, pure and simple. There's severe sleep deprivation, uncomfortable living conditions, day-to-day operations such as raiding houses and buildings and searching for weapons, weapons caches, terrorists, things of that nature. In every operation I served in, it was extremely hot. Temperatures range from 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, plus having to walk for miles with 75 to 100-pound gear on your back makes it worse. In the midst of all this, people are still trying to kill you. People are still shooting. Most times you're confused because you have no idea where or who the fire is coming from. That's when the confusion starts, and then the noise starts. Before you know it, somebody gets hit. You have to scurry to try to get them medevac, which is short Marine jargon for medical evacuation by way of helicopter or some type of a Red Cross vehicle. All the time while you're still under the threat of being killed yourself, and you still have more fire coming your way. And then at night, when you are on an observation post all by yourself, the fear of death starts in on you. Personally, I got to a point in each operation where I began counting the days till it was actually time for me to die, rather than to count the days till it's time for me to go home. So it's difficult to explain, but you kind of lose the ability to identify with home and family and everything that's here in the United States. And you sort of lose your mind a little bit. It's temporary insanity, and you shouldn't feel bad when you're there because we all experience it. Then one day it happens. The dreaded thing that you always dread about war is one of your brothers die and feeling of vulnerability hits you. That this is real and you're not that far away from death yourself, so you sort of develop a sense that regardless, you don't want to die. And you completely disregard human life, and you make up the resolve in your mind that you will kill anything or anyone that will try to kill you. And you will. Regardless of your beliefs, you will preserve life and the lives of your fellow comrades. So you end up going through a range of emotions, from hatred to anger, do a lot of swearing, a lot of cussing. Um, and sometimes, I know for a religious person as myself, it's difficult to say this, but sometimes you even get mad at God. So, did I or do I believe in what we were doing over there, what we were fighting for? I'll put it this way: a combatant, soldier, Marine, we have the privilege of not being concerned with the politics of war while we're at war. I personally believed and still do believe in answering my country's call to duty, and I did answer it. I believed in fighting for my brothers to the left and to my right. And at that time, this is a harsh thing to say, but no one here in the States existed. Nobody else existed. But we were trying to keep each other alive. Um, so, in a sense, I guess I did put my brothers before my ideals of what was right and what was wrong. Because the only thing that's right in combat is taking care of each other, keeping your brothers alive. So how many years or how long did I stay in combat? Out of my first 4-year enlistment, I spent approximately 3 years of it at war in different countries. I was a machine gunner. 0331 is the job description. But assignments change daily depending on the situation. I mean, you may be a machine gunner, but I also served as a rifleman. I also served in the combined anti-armor team. I served MP duty, served guard duty, convoy duty. So it just depends. I mean, I was even influential in building a school in Haiti. So your job is dictated by the necessary needs of the Corps. But the first thing that a Marine is a rifleman. Before anything else, a Marine is a rifleman. Have I ever killed anyone? To be a little candid, a little bit more candid, I will say that I have shot men. And I will say this: to kill a man is a difficult thing to do. It requires a hard heart. A lot of people talk about what they would do in situations where they would kill this or kill that. I will be the first to say that you don't know what you'll do in any given situation. The first time I was shot at, I panicked. I almost cried and laid there in fright, but it wasn't until seemed like forever. But it was only seconds later I got my bearings together and they began to return fire and repel the attack. And yes, I have seen friends die, and I've watched people die. I've watched people murdered right in front of me, people that had nothing to do with the current situation at the time. So, yeah. What is life like in a war zone? Life in a war zone is hard to describe. As I said, anger and hate runs rampant, and there's some good times with your buddies, but those are few and far between. The basic necessities of life that we take for granted, bathing, you don't bathe regularly. In fact, we took what we commonly known as baby wipes. That was one of the most important things that was on every Marine's gear list, is because we knew that we were out on patrol, out on the road or something, or on a convoy, maybe gone for weeks at a time away from the base camp or the operating base. So, which they had showers set up there, but we didn't get to use them because we were out doing our jobs. So you take what's called a baby white bath, and to be a little discreet, it's basically just touching up the major or most important parts of the anatomy, if you get my drift. Uh, Simple things we take for granted, like using the restroom or eating lunch, are non-existent. You eat where you can. You eat when you can. Use the restroom when and where you can. You sleep when and where you can. I remember during Freedom we had makeshift toilets, and all they were 50-gallon drums cut in half and a piece of plywood stuck over the top of them with holes in them, and that's how we did number two. Uh, so when you have downtime, all you can think about is home, and you don't even want to start dwelling on it, because at a moment's notice you realize home is so far away in location and time, and also dwelling on home and dwelling on the normalcy of life can easily get you killed. You have to be alert at all times. In fact, that's usually what gets men killed at war, is their minds being elsewhere. I just remember always wanting to get back home to my wife and my child. We were recently married only 2 days before I left for Iraq in 2003. Being a Marine means a lot of things to me. It means mostly that I have had to live through some horrible things. I've had to do some tough things. But the Marine Corps is designed to make you adapt to those things. The Marine Corps, unlike any other branch of the military, is an amphibious war service, meaning that we fight, and that's all that we're designed for. The Army has its quartermaster and its Corps of Engineers. The Marine Corps doesn't have that, because the Marine Corps is a combat armed service. It's strictly amphibious. All of the equipment that we use is made for quick strike from the land and from the sea and from the ocean. Either way we can get there. Its design is that it is the president's branch. The president can dispatch without permission from Congress the United States Marine Corps, a contingency of Marine Corps of Marines, anywhere in the world up to 90 days without authorization. If you hear about a crisis in another country, Marines are nearby. With that being said, serving the Marines has been more than an honor to me. There's no such thing as a former ex-Marine, as the old saying goes. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Returning home was a difficult experience. I could only find a job as security guard because no one wanted to hire a hardened war vet. Irony is that the country that I gave so much in service to seemed not to have a home to return to, for me to return to. So I began to self-absorb, withdraw from the world. I suffered severe depression and anxiety, of which I still face, I still suffer from time to time, but it's not as concentrated as it was when I first came back. Suffered from extreme bouts with PTSD, where I would drink heavily for a while, for long periods of time, and would come home and YouTube war videos, Iraqi war videos, and I had a little room in my house, and I would go in and lock my door and drink and watch those videos. While after completing my service, I gained over 100 pounds. Health began to fail. suffered hypervigilance and fear, and I didn't want anything to do with the world. I went to several psychiatrists for help, from the VA to several veterans groups. I've come to realize that I will never fully recover from the trauma I experienced, but rather I'm learning to live with it. There are still times, even now, that I have flashbacks that last for days, and I can't get certain moments out of my head. I also still have nightmares, though they're less frequent. And when I first return, I scare my wife sometimes. My temper is still pretty bad, but it's a lot better than it was. There's several things, it's very difficult to try to put a finger on what it was like coming back, because it's just so difficult coming back to a world where you're used to doing 100 miles an hour every day, and you come back to civilian life. It's hard to adjust. Road rage, and it was hard to keep a job, simply because my temper was so bad. I was always worried that I wouldn't return home. Each time I left, I just always had the dreaded feeling that it would be my last time with my family. As I stated earlier, my oldest daughter, Ayala, was just a baby, and I recently married my wife just days before leaving on my second tour, which was in Iraq. After being at war for a while, I actually developed a feeling that I was only waiting to die. I actually felt that sometimes that I wish it would just happen so I could get it over with. My family was still very young, and we were basically trying to cope with things as they came. We were trying to hold it together, especially being so young. My mother's heart broke every time I left, so I would try to conceal that knowledge of me leaving from her, so I wouldn't worry her. My sisters always were very worried. Because of them, I was still a little brother, and they wanted to protect me at all times, just like when we were children. My father is a man of duty, and he has very little emotion. He never showed any sign of worry, although he hated to see me go overseas each time, but he was always completely competent in the United States Marine Corps. My wife, on the other hand, she was a nervous wreck, and so was I. I will never forget the night that my unit left for Iraq. Actually, it was about 3 in the morning on January the 13th, 2003. As I boarded the buses to take us to Cherry Point, the Marine Corps Air Base in North Carolina, I remember that same tree that my wife was standing by, along with my 2-year-old daughter at the time. And I watched her cry, and I cried inside. The Marines are not supposed to cry in public. It's disgraceful. We're not allowed to lose our bearing, but I know that there are several men I served with feeling the same thing, as they too watched their loved ones in the same state as my wife. It was this way each time I left, and after being in the theater of war for just one day, the only thing I could think about is how unfair this all seemed. Here I am, a new father, and new husband, new family man, and I need to be there with them, not fighting war. Then I realized that this is what I signed up for. I volunteered, and I knew the consequences. Look, America our military is 100% volunteer now. There's no draft. The draft days are back in the 70s with Vietnam, so I knew what I was getting into. and I had to just bite the bullet and face the consequences. But overseas, there's family readiness organizations developed by Marine wives who were able to have what we call DSN lines installed for us. With the DSN line is basically a satellite phone. It's not very reliable, so uh, they did it so we could talk to our families once every couple of weeks. These phones were strategically placed around Kuwait. There weren't any in Iraq because the whole country of Iraq, while I was there, was a war zone. Kuwait, we had what was basically known as R&R, it's rest and relaxation camps. So if we could get a chance to make our way back to Kuwait for a day or so, we took it. But trying to talk on those DSN lines, the lines to use them were so long. A lot of time we didn't have time to wait, so because we were on a mission or headed to another mission, so it was hit or miss because we were on the other side of the world. So when it was night over there, it was daytime here. So if you ever tried to call home and didn't catch your family a certain time, it was disappointing. It was possible to miss talking with them for weeks. However, when there was a large scale invasion or mission underway, or some type of huge planning, such as the invasion of Baghdad, they would call what was come to be known as blackout periods. This was the complete stoppage of all correspondence to home. No mail, no care packages, no phone calls, nothing. This was due to operational security, and there was no way for family members to know if we were dead or alive during this time. I know my wife, several times during the blackouts, that she was just hypervigilant and couldn't sleep. Every piece of news she heard on CNN or Fox concerning Marines or submarines being killed, she just figured it was me, or that I was part of that. So war is hell, as I said previously. From day one, it takes only a few moments to realize that it's going to be difficult. It cannot be explained simply as an experience, because while you're there, it's life. A simple, complicated, little big mess. When you arrive, the movements of hundreds of thousands of personnel takes days, even weeks to move. Then there is a large-scale movement of ammunition, supplies, armored vehicles, tanks, troop transport carriers, weapons, etc., you name it. Is by no means a small undertaking. It is once stated that for every infantry marine, that it requires that there be 10 to 20 supply clerks, or supply marines, to actually do the brunt of the work to keep that one fighting marine, keep him fighting, keep him moving. After troop movements, you got defensive perimeters have to set up with absolute precision. This requires compasses and pinpoint accuracy. Then there's the actual fortifying and camouflaging of your operating bases, setting up communication, checkpoints, and standard operational procedures. But on the very basic level, on the individual Marines level, it still remains that it is hell. You patrol and patrol until you wear your boots out. You sweat, you stink, you have ailments that are unheard of here that you can't treat every morning. My commanding officer would ensure that we took our malaria pills, which in Iraq the sun was so hot and bright, that it caused several Marines to cause their skin to scorch. It also provided us with smallpox inoculations in case of biological warfare. This inoculation was basically a small dose of the actual disease, and it had to be covered at all times. formed a little bitty sore. I still have mine. Actually, it's the wrong arm. If you can see that right there, that's where my smallpox inoculation is. But you had to keep that covered up, or if it ran or festered, or any of the fluid ran out of that sore, then it could cause the actual disease of smallpox to spread. And this was difficult to operate at such a high tempo and to prevent the spread of this disease. Of course, watching people die is always the most difficult part of it, even your enemies. Sadly, there were times the Marines actually would kill and maim out of sheer anger and hatred. I recall an operation Enduring Freedom in the Philippines. I was on a joint mission with some Filipino Marines who were tasked with rescuing an American missionary couple who were captured the previous year by the Abu Sayyaf guerrillas, terrorist cell linked to Al-Qaeda. Well, we were going on an operation, a mission to rescue this missionary couple. Well, because the president of the Philippines, Gloria Arroyo, wanted her Philippine Marines to gain notoriety. Somehow she finagled things to where the main assaulting party of this operation would be Philippine Marines, and my unit was tasked as being a backup element for this rescue. The only problem is that they were not nearly as trained as we were. Well, we assaulted the objective, and in the midst of the effort, the husband was killed due to lack of knowledge by the lesser trained Philippine Marines. I was so angry, and I had hatred in my heart because those were our citizens. We should have gotten them out. Not the Philippines, Filipino Marines. And to know that one of the people that I swore to protect when I enlisted was killed due to some political reasons caused me to hate the Philippines. Approximately 1 month later, I and my unit fended off an armed attack while on patrol. We completely destroyed the attackers, killing all 4 of them. After completing the after-action report, it was discovered that the 4 assailants, 4 combatants, were all kids. The oldest was 14 and the youngest was 12. I couldn't believe this. I hated myself, and I hated that I felt that I was right to kill them. I hated myself that I had to kill kids. They were just mere children. These are the parts of war that no one wants to ever talk about. There are many other atrocities that I've experienced, but to try to place the war in a particular little box is impossible to do. There are so many dynamics to it. Madness is real. Temporary insanity is real. Life and death, they're both real. There are things I did over there that I don't know how I was not killed doing them. As I was manning a gun position in Haiti, I watched an absolute horror as a Haitian female was murdered in the street. Her only crime was she's trying to get medical assistance for her dying daughter from a Navy corpsman. And due to the operation being held as a peacekeeping mission, we were only able to fire if we were fired on. The hatred and helplessness I felt that day is indescribable. I still have nightmares from this incident, and it seemed so unreal that years later, after meeting up with my best friend for a little reunion, I asked him, did we really witness that event? Then we both had a drink and we cried that night. As I say continuously, war is hell, and the effects continue to last and transcend time. Finally, I'll share a little experience. One experience I will share is that it's very difficult for me to share. I will only say that I was involved and I was charged with an illegal shooting during Operation Enduring Freedom. I will not get into details as they are a bit shady and gray, but I will say that the incident almost broke me. I was read my rights by my military tribunal and my commanding officer. I was stripped of my weapons and ammunition for a time approximately 1 month, pending the hearing. Actual hearing was held in the Philippines, and I was found guilty and sentenced, but my battalion sergeant major Burrs actually pulled some kind of rank and actually removed the conviction from my service record. His reason was, as he told me, that it was unfair and that we were operational and on high alert and that the incident could have happened to anyone. And that it was bound to happen again at some time during the war, especially at combat. During that time I was disarmed, it was the most depressing time for me. I actually thought strongly about taking my own life. Not only had I committed this horrible act, but I had achieved them. And as a part of my punishment, I dug trenches, refortified defensive perimeters, positions from sun up to sundown. I felt horrible. While my buddies were still fighting, I was stuck doing this servile work. It was a mistake, pure and simple, but why couldn't they see that? And it could have happened to anyone. Also felt like I never wanted to carry a weapon again. However, soon afterwards I was reinstated and placed back on the line with the rest of my brothers. I look back and I still have flashbacks about those days.